Before we go and talk about the similarities, let's talk about the differences. For one, and the most obvious, is that the ASUS has a CD drive and the HP doesn't. Another difference is the ASUS has a USB-C port and the HP doesn't. And another difference is the ASUS for the fan is out on the side and the HP is out on the back. Most people prefer the fan to be out on the back of the laptop because it doesn't burn their hands or anything on the left side of the computer. Another difference is also that the keyboard. As you can see, the ASUS keyboard has a backlit keyboard that can change colors, and you can also change to static manual colors, while the HP stays red and you can't change it at all. It's always red. Now, another difference is the screens. As you can see over here, is that the ASUS got a better screen and it's an IPS sRGB of 98% screen, while the HP is just got a default TN panel. And another difference is that the graphics card. For the ASUS graphics card, you got a GTX 1050 Ti of 4GB. And for the HP, you got a GTX 1050 of 4GB. Now let's talk about the similarities of both laptops. The first similarity is that they're both running the latest version of Windows 10, as you can see here. Another similarity is that they're both running an Intel i7-7700HQ CPU. Another similarity is that they both got 16GB of RAM and their max capacity is 32GB of DDR4 laptop RAM. A thing that I forgot to mention was that the ASUS got a gaming center which you can tune the fan to max RPM for max FPS for max cooling, and the HP doesn't have it. In later versions, the HP finally came with it, but for this version that we have today, the HP doesn't have that feature or that application to do it. Now it is time for the benchmarks. This is the ASUS laptop and we're testing CS2. For the FPS average we were getting was 89 FPS, and for the 1% low average it was 41 FPS. For the CPU load we got an average of 55%, and for the GPU load we got an average of 64%. Now in terms of temperatures, for the CPU we got an average of 85 degrees, and for the GPU we got an average of 62 degrees. For both VRAM and RAM, it was an average of 2.5GB used. This is Counter-Strike 2 on the HP Omen. Now we're playing on the low graphical settings with 1080p. On the average FPS, we got 82 FPS. On the 1% low average, we got 35 FPS. Now this is quite a bit lower than the ASUS laptop, but mind you here, the ASUS laptop's got a 1050 Ti, while this laptop's just got a 1050. For CPU load, we got 54%. And GPU load we got 69%. This is quite similar to the ASUS laptop. Now for CPU temperature we got 91 degrees, which is a lot hotter than the ASUS laptop. But mind you here, the ASUS is turned on turbo mode and this laptop is on auto mode because we can't do anything about that. For GPU temperatures is 59 degrees, and on the ASUS it was 62 degrees, which was quite weird. The ASUS was on turbo mode and this computer wasn't. And for VRAM, we got 2.5GB used, and for RAM, we got 2.7GB used, which is quite similar to the ASUS laptop. Now it's time to test GTA 5. Here, we're testing GTA 5 Legacy on story mode on the ASUS laptop, and we're also testing it with high graphical settings on 1080p. For the FPS on average, we were getting an average of 59 FPS, and for the 1% low average, it was 43 FPS. Mind you here, for better FPS, you can turn these settings to medium or low, but high settings works just fine. For the CPU load, we got an average of 61%, and for the GPU load, we got an average of 94%. Now in terms for temperatures on the CPU, we got an average of 81 degrees, and for the GPU, we got an average of 65 degrees. For both VRAM and RAM, it was an average of 2.0GB used. Now mind you here, it was raining a lot in the game, and that might have lowered some FPS data, just like in the maps Ancient and Train does over in CS2. Now this isn't a FPS breaking thing, and it was still playable. Now it's time to test GTA 5 Legacy on story mode on the HP laptop, and over here we were testing the game on high/very high graphical settings with 1080p. For FPS, we got an average FPS of 60 FPS, and for the 1% lows on average we were getting 37 FPS. On the HP laptop, we were getting nearly the same average FPS as we did for the ASUS laptop, but for the 1% lows on average, we were getting a bit lower FPS. This is because the ASUS has a better GPU with its 1050 Ti. Now for the CPU load, we got an average of 42%, and for the GPU load, it was an average of 68%, which was much less than the ASUS laptop, and I don't know why that is. For the CPU temperatures, we were seeing about an average of 86 degrees, and for the GPU, we were seeing an average about 63 degrees, which was quite similar to what we saw on the ASUS laptop. For RAM and VRAM, it used about 3GB of DDR4 memory, which was 1GB more than the ASUS laptop. The only thing I can say here is that the ASUS laptop manages RAM quite a lot better than the HP does. Now mind you here, on the HP, we were running on high/very high graphical settings on 1080p, and on the ASUS, we were just running it on high graphical settings on 1080p. When I did the same to run on high/very high graphical settings on 1080p for the ASUS stuttered a lot more than on the HP, and it was really unplayable for the ASUS laptop. Now it's back to the ASUS laptop for some Battlefield 1. Here, we were testing it with low graphical settings on 1080p. For the FPS, we got an average of 60 FPS, and 41% low on average, we were getting 33 FPS. Mind you here, if I turn it up to medium settings, it will start to lag more. For the CPU load, we got an average of 61%, and for the GPU load, we got an average of 64%. Now in terms of temperatures, for the CPU, we got an average of 85 degrees, and for the GPU, we got an average of 68 degrees. For VRAM, it used an average of 1.5GB, and for RAM, it used an average of 3.7GB. Now it is time to test Battlefield 1 on the HP laptop, and over here, we were testing the game on low graphical settings with 1080p. For average FPS, we got an average FPS of 60 FPS, and 41% lows, on average we were getting 29 FPS. On the HP laptop, we were getting the same average FPS as we did for the ASUS laptop, but 41% lows, we were getting a bit lower FPS on average than the ASUS laptop. This is because the ASUS laptop has a better GPU, which is the 1050 Ti, and this laptop's got a 1050. Now for the CPU load, we were getting an average of 58%, and for the GPU, it was 73%, and for both GPU and CPU load, it was utilized a lot more than the ASUS laptop. For the CPU temperatures, we were seeing about an average of 93 degrees, and for the GPU, we were seeing an average of 60 degrees. On the CPU, here we were getting way higher temps, while the GPU temps were lower than the ASUS laptop. For VRAM used, it was about 1.5GB used, which was the same as the ASUS laptop. Lastly, for RAM, it used about 3.5GB, and it was quite similar to the ASUS laptop as well. So in the end, which laptop did better? Well, it was definitely the ASUS laptop. This is because the ASUS laptop had better FPS due to it having a better graphics card with GTX 1050 Ti, and the HP just having a GTX 1050. Another thing to point out is that the ASUS, although being a little harder at times than the HP was, the games did look better on the ASUS screen. This is because the ASUS has an IPS quality screen with 95 to 100% sRGB. The HP also has an IPS screen, but it's only 60 to 65% sRGB. Another place where the ASUS wins is a CD drive. If you want to use it for games or movies, yes you can. Where the HP wins is its portability because it weighs less than the ASUS. Another thing is that the HP lasts longer with its original battery specifications. The ASUS just having a 48 watt-hour battery and the HP having a 63.3 watt-hour battery. If you are on a budget, should you buy these laptops? I can say it's only for the ASUS. If you can only find one in good condition, this is because there's no default Windows 11, but you can run Windows 11 IoT or Linux on it. I've only tried Ubuntu Linux on the ASUS laptop. Also, a few people mentioned online that the HP, even with a new battery and all, eventually the battery degrades and puffs up a lot quicker than the ASUS does. It is a known issue for the HP. The ASUS doesn't have this issue unless you don't take care of it.